Hold on. Y'all can hear me now, right? Man, let me tell y'all something. Y'all can everybody hear me? Okay, good. Listen, I have to tell y'all, it might be something happening. I've been blaspheming today. I did some blaspheming earlier today. And so it might come back on me. You know, the spirits, the Holy Spirit, Jesus Christ and his daddy, they might be on me because I said some things. I said some things I didn't have to say. And when I said some things I didn't have to say, and now shit's starting to be jank. And you know how the Lord communicates in mysterious ways when he could just show us, stop playing hide and seek. But anyway, everybody can hear me, right? Sorry about that. I was just welcoming everybody to the scariest show of the year. This is the last show until Halloween. So, we're going to talk about some scary shit, y'all. Mad scary shit. And, it tends to be, my people tend to be spooky. We don't play around. All them memes and jokes about if black people were in a horror movie, how the shit wouldn't go down the way it goes down. Because we don't play about that. We don't play about the supernatural. We don't play about the other world. So my stuff is messed up. And I think I know why my shit was janky coming from the start. I unplugged everything and plugged it back in. That's all I know. That's the extent of my technical knowledge. But I said this just 4 hours ago. I said, every black Christian is a living testament, not to God's glory, but to European conquest. Now, why did I have to say that? I didn't have to say it. It's true. But how does that help anybody? And let me tell you why. I believe that, and I've said this before, let me just lead us up here. Some people be wanting to screenshot. I don't run from nothing. I'm going to leave it up here for a second. But I'm under the impression that until black people abandon, because your religion isn't just how you value. Your religion isn't just tell you don't fornicate, don't masturbate, don't eat swine, don't lie, don't steal. Your religion dictates how you perceive and then interact with all reality. Your religion tells you about what is before your life and what's going to happen after your life. So your religion, if you're really real with your shit, is going to dictate what you deem as good, worthy, whole. It even tells you what is beautiful and what is ugly, what is nurturing and what is nasty. So it's real weird to me that people be like, you got to respect other people's religion. Ain't nothing personal about religion. The only way you can have a personal Lord and Savior, the only way you can have a personal relationship with God is if you lived on an isolated island and you never interacted with any other person. That's the only way. I was just watching something because I was listening to reggae, right? And I like Cuddy Ranks. I even like the songs where he encourages domestic violence. I'm just not a good person. I'm not a whole person. And so I was watching Cuddy Ranks. And then I'm like, man, I got to go get that record. And that record is so much that I used to have CDs and cassettes and records that I've lost over the years. And then I watch a video on YouTube. Woo, woo, woo. Anyway, I went down a dance hall rabbit hole. And I went from listening to some old dance hall classics to listening to some interviews of some of the artists I used to listen to and support back in the day. And then I saw an interview from Shabba Ranks. And Shabba Ranks was saying in this interview that anybody that violates God's law should be crucified. And he said that with his whole chest. Shabba, with that thundering voice. He's like the Jamaican James Earl Jones. That man got a voice. And he said, anyone that violate God's law should be crucified. And I'm like, Shabba. What in the world? And so anyway, I'm like, man, this religion shit, this Western theology shit, this Christianity stuff got us all effed up in the game, to the extent that if we ended capitalism, if we ended colonialism, if we ended racism, we'd still be living in a dystopian, dysfunctional, hellish existence. And I say this, and think about this when I say this, Black folks. Imagine any other population of people, race, ethnicity, or nationality. Think of any non-African, non-Black race, ethnicity, or nationality. And if the vast majority of their population begin to perceive reality according to the myths, the folklores, the legend, the supernatural phenomenon from outside their culture, I'm telling you, any functional population, even dysfunctional populations, would view that as a state of emergency. They would be holding seminars. They'd bring their military strategists. They'd bring their community and social psychologists. They bring their greatest academics and historians and social scientists and political scientists. They bring them all together and have conferences saying, why are the majority of our population now, if some white girl with matted fur, some white girl with dreadlocks goes to Bangladesh, some white boy goes to Tibet and climbs a mountain in Tibet and puts on some linen underwear and wants to chant, white folks just charge that to the game. They charge it to the game like, yeah, of course you're going to have them, but they're hippies. They're the white sheep of the family. You know, they have terms. But when you get whole swaths of white folks, now white folks will allow for cults. You can have Scientology, you can have Mormonism, you can have cults, but those cults better be rooted in capitalism and white hegemony. So the bottom line is, African people, if we were really about liberation, if we were really about paying the debt we owe to our long-suffering ancestors, we wouldn't just let this shit slide with 90% of Africans worshiping a god and engaging reality from a colonizer's perspective, Islam, Christianity. It should be a state of emergency. It should be a personal and collective mission for us to turn that around. And then whenever you talk about Christianity, they want to run to the Ethiopians, those poor Ethiopians. Now, Christianity was practiced in Ethiopia during the 4th century. They had been practicing Christianity in Ethiopia for as long as they had been practicing it in Greece and Rome. From the foundings of the Holy Roman Empire, from the era of Constantine, yes, Christian in Egypt and Ethiopia, Christianity has been in Africa since its founding. I don't argue that. No one who is literate would argue that. But something being there from day one does not make it of African origin. If you go to the Ethiopia, and here's one thing, let me say this. I'm a Christian. You a Black American Christian. You a Methodist. You a Baptist. You a Catholic. You know, you non-denominational. I ain't met one non-Ethiopian Coptic Christian. I ain't met one non-Ethiopian who practiced Ethiopian Christianity. When I lived in Kansas City, there was a large Ethiopian community, Ethiopians and Eritreans. They understood the difference. I couldn't tell them apart. I'm like, y'all all the same people, but they was like, no. And they had beef, but they would worship in some of the same. And the Ethiopians and the Eritreans, none of the Black people, the Black Americans, went to that church. Even though if I be in Kansas City being like, why y'all worshiping this white man's religion? They were like, if the Coptic Christian, Ethiopian, and Africa, it started in Africa. And I'm like, then why don't you go? You claim not only that it has African origins, you can trace it back to the African origins, but all of y'all motherfuckers, all of y'all practice the bastardized version. I can't sit here and be like, that ain't real hip hop. All I'm listening to is who's not real hip hop? All I do is listen to Drake and Eminem. And then my justification for listening exclusively to Drake and Eminem is that, hey, it started with the black, hip hop started in the black community out of Soundview, South Bronx. Then I'm like, then go listen to that shit. Go do that shit. Go do Coptic Christianity if you believe it. If you believe something has African roots and the African roots are still here today, why aren't you practicing the original version? But another thing is, even if you do that, and you go and practice Coptic ancient Christianity, you cannot argue that it was founded in Africa. Even though it's been in Africa for as long as it's been in Europe, it did not come out of Africa. It did not come out of the African mind, the African culture, the African value system, African mythology. And don't you go get no Egyptian Book of the Dead. Don't you go get the Book of Coming Forth by Day. Don't you go get that. Because y'all would love talking about, oh yeah, it came from this. But let me tell you this. Shit. The origins of shit is food. That does not justify the consumption of human waste. The origins of something being good does not justify you participating in the digested and evacuated outcome. But I'm gonna have to tell y'all, I hate to tell y'all this. Even if you are the most dedicated African Christian, you go to their oldest scrolls, you go to their oldest documents, and they will say that the first bishop, the founder of our church, the first bishop of Axum is Saint Phromedes. Saint Phromedes was a Greek coming out of, I'm just saying, it was a white man. He didn't come with the sword. He didn't come with an army and an armada. He was a monk. He was a holy man. He didn't convert the Ethiopians through conquest. I give you all that. I give you that the Ethiopians were not converted through Christianity through conquest. I give you that. I give you that. But that don't make it. So I'll tell you this. Even if you're doing Coptic Christianity, you still can't say this is of African origin. Even go talk to your Ethiopian neighbors, go to your local Ethiopian restaurant, sit down and have a nice meal, and then look at him and ask him, who is the first bishop of Axum? Who is the founding father? Who is considered the monk, the holy man that first brought the light of Christ to the ancient 4th century Ethiopian church? And it will not be an African man. Or just go on to Google Images. Let's do that. Let's just go to Google Images and search the first bishop of Axum. You're not going to see nobody with African features, African characteristics. You're going to see somebody that if they were alive today, they'd have a 775 credit score. That's that Mandim. That's the founder of African Christianity. So there are Coptic Black Christians who can say, listen, I'm a Christian, but my people, my heritage, my history was not Christianity via conquest. You could say that. And they make up less than 1% of Black Christians. They make up less than 1%. So 99% of y'all know Christ through conquest. And even if you follow a fragment or an offshoot of Christianity that was not brought to our people through conquest, you still can't say it's an African religion with African origins. Now, it's been in Africa so long that it has African characteristics. It has an African perspective, and I wouldn't even go to a Coptic Christian and say stop doing that. I wouldn't slap no Coptic Bible or Coptic scroll out of anybody's hand. But that's a different conversation, because I have talked to Coptic Christians over a delicious meal with my injera and my tiklit and my achawat. I've sat over meals and talked to Coptic Christians, and they will say, yeah, conquest, murder. Even the Ethiopian Christian kings were bitten by the conquest bug and empire. So all that to say, you're lying to yourself and you're lying to the rest of us. Messira Watt, Goldman, I have to go. You know, I had a choice. My wife said, let's go out to eat, because both of our sons were out and about. And it was just her. And she's like, I ain't cooking nothing. Let's go get something to eat. And I had a choice between True Foods and Ethiopian. And I don't know why I said True. I said True Foods because I had just been to Ethiopian when we were in Kansas City. Shout out to Daniel and Salam and Blue Nile restaurants. If you in Kansas City in the River Market area, why don't you mosey on down and get you some delicious Blue Nile Ethiopian. Still is some of the best Ethiopian. I've had literally Ethiopian food from coast to coast in the United States. I'm only speaking within the confines of the empire. Within the confines of the U.S. imperial nation, Kansas City, Blue Nile has the best Ethiopian. I'm going to go ahead and keep it a buck, even though when I see Daniel, he might have words for me. Their coffee, they don't have the best Ethiopian coffee I ever had. Was some little back street place in the Ethiopian restaurant in Oakland, California. That's Cantor Corner, just a block and a half up from the Whole Foods in Oakland. That's the best coffee, Ethiopian coffee I had. But food, hands down, I put that on my hood. Is Blue Nile in Kansas City. See, we got a Yankee girl in here. Yankee. Yes, it is spicy, but you can they make it. You know, most people, Cambodian, Vietnamese, Ethiopian, most cultures that have spicy foods, they know if they're going to open and operate and generate revenue within the United States, they know to tone it down. So, you know, they can yankify your food. They'll yankify your food if you tell them, don't bring that hot stuff out here. They know how to do it, dilute it a little bit. So you just got to say it ahead of time. Because if you are African descent, they will assume you can handle the spice. The West Indian, I swear, one time I thought this Trinidadian woman was trying to poison me. She gave me some vegan stew that was so spicy. I mean, I was like, what's she trying to poison me for? What did I do? I was literally racing my head to try to remember what I have done to wrong this. Should I scroll a note on here when they find my body? So, yeah, I know what it's like. They don't have respect for us Midwestern black folks who was raised on Lowry salt. We come up on Lowry salt and cracked pepper. We don't know that exotic shit. We're not tropical Africans. We've been, you know, our conditioning has been conditioned. But I digress. What am I talking about here? All I'm saying is, number one, the vast majority of Africans who accept Jesus Christ as their Lord and Savior are descendants of brutal conquest and only worship and acknowledge Jesus Christ as their Lord and Savior through brutal, unrelenting, genocidal conquest, colonization, and slavery. For the small 1% of Africans who accept Jesus Christ as their Lord and Savior and worship God, they did not come through Christianity as a result of conquest, but even their Christianity, if you go back to its roots in the 4th century, originated from Greek monks who were located in parts of what we now call Persia or the Middle East. And we can acknowledge that the Ethiopian, the Coptic Christian, did put their African slant on it and give it an African perspective. But the origins, just like I don't care if Eminem was sold the most records. He ain't the root. And it can be 10,000 to 1,000,000 years from now, white folks can rap. They will never be the originators. No matter how many times, how many more rappers get into the Hall of Fame or whatever, or go multi-platinum. The origins are the origins. That's all I'm saying. Anyway, now I know y'all scared. Didn't I tell you this is gonna be scary? Woo! Ooh, BroDiallo, you scary. Now I had a brother come at me. Now I talk about this, and then we're gonna move on to the scary shit. I had a brother step to me, right? And I had a brother step to me and be like, man, you talking all that atheist stuff, that's played out. Because in the earlier days of the internet, the white internet, white folks went on this whole atheist thing, and the atheism devolved into Western chauvinism. And so many of the early white atheists on the internet started to get into white nationalism and white chauvinism and white contrarianism. And because white folks took atheism and infused it with white racism and white nationalism and white chauvinism, that made atheism illegitimate for black people, as if they are our teachers. They set the standards for us. They set the example for us. My critique, criticism, and rejection of Christianity did not come from no shaggy-haired white man. My critique and eventual rejection of alien, foreign, colonizer religions came from African scholars. John G. Jackson. It came from Dr. John Henry Clark, Dr. Marimba Aini. Yes, Sam Harris is a racist piece of shit, has always been a racist piece of shit, which is no matter how often you hear me reference, quote, or acknowledge atheism and its merits, you'll never see me quoting somebody like Sam Harris or that other scumbag racist white nationalist. And these same people, who's the dude that died? I can't remember his name. See, I don't even know their fucking names. So a lot of people, black people that are skeptics, secular, agnostic, or atheists, their orientation and their origins came from these white people. And then Christopher Hitchens, yes, scumbag, Hitchens. See, you know them all. You know them all. Yes. So a lot of our people that were on the internet watching videos and stuff. Now, there are some good white atheists, bless their hearts, and they're doing the work of the Antichrist. They're doing the work of the anti-Lord. But a lot of black people that came into atheism, there was no, because it was so rare and was given such a hostile reception in the black community, a lot of black people made community with these white racists. And we have a tendency that if we can find a population of white people saying things we like, we overlook the shit we don't like. So you find that with a lot of manosphere brothers, and they'll find out and say masculinity and manhood is under attack. Woo, woo, woo. And so black people will go over there with fresh and fit, with the top G. They'll go over there into the manosphere and high value their shit, and they start and passport broing and start overlooking the racism because they found a home. A lot of brothers into that gun culture. A lot of brothers that are really into their fucking guns will show up at the gun range and see the Confederate flag and the Trump 2024 and MAGA shit and just, look the other way so we do that. So a lot of black people get into atheism and start to overlook the white nationalism. And then the brother's going to tell me, because of these white racist atheists, we should abandon atheism. And I'm like, if racist being in that sphere means we should abandon it, then how the blood clot are you a Christian? Now, I should forego my atheism, even though it ain't even tied to or connected to these white chauvinists. I should forego. And even if I'm going to be an atheist individual, I should not speak publicly about it because the whole culture and community has been corrupted by these white men. If that's the case, then how do you justify being a Christian? For every act of overt racism that you find within the atheist community, I can show you 100 years to 1,000 years of white aggression, racism, atrocities, and genocide committed by Christians and justified by Christianity. So what you want to do? So anyway, don't let these brothers who think that white folks are the standard, that white men are the rule, tell you that, oh, atheism, that's so passe. That's so 2015. That's so 2008. Now we've moved on. And white folks and white liberals can move on from atheism because they are not under Christian theocratic oppression and genocide. So they can be like, yo, atheism was cool a few decades ago, and it's no longer cool to be an outspoken atheist now. And maybe when it comes up, it'll start trending again, and they put on these things, these concepts like their clothes, but their fucking continent isn't colonized and controlled. Can you imagine if you had a dozen people who thought that you spoke with the word of God? You know what a powerful position that is? Imagine if you had 1,000 people who thought you were the conduit of God's word. Imagine how powerful a position that is. Some of black people don't have to imagine because we got corrupt ass ministers and preachers and imams all throughout our hood who have that fucking kind of power. And they perpetuate our oppression because it is a historical fact. The more people have material strength and material confidence in their capacities in the real world, the less they look to the sky. The more agency people have in life, the less they give it over to supernatural forces. But I digress. It's just sad for me for a brother who's conscious, who's with it, to say he don't mess with atheism anymore because of these white nationalists and white chauvinists have turned him off from atheism. But white nationalists and white chauvinists haven't turned you off from spirituality and religion. Okay. Because the white atheists, as bad as many of those white atheists are, they need another 1,400 to 2,000 years to catch up with their white religious counterparts. Anyway, what are we talking about? Oh, we scared of the wrong shit. Now, today's show is foolish phobias. Being scared of shit we got no business being scared of. And I'm going to open the phone because I'd like you, if you're listening, in the comments, when we open up, or you can come on live, I'll share the link and tell me shit that you scared of. And you can tell me whether you think it is a phobia, because a phobia is an irrational fear. If you fear, or if you are afraid of a condition, afraid of something that can't actually harm you, that you have an irrational fear. And there's different levels of phobia. There are some phobias that are completely debilitating. I saw this one video where this woman was driving a car on the highway and she saw a spider in her car. And while the car was moving, she literally leapt out of her car from the driver's side. She leapt out and did a barrel roll and got up and started walking. She gave the car to the spider. Like she signed the fucking title of the car over to the spider. That was it. She was done, through, broken, busted, gone. So that's a severe phobia. And I think we make a lot of fun of people, but I've worked in psych wards as a contractor, and I've seen people with like debilitating mental afflictions. And it's not funny. It's funny to think about. I understand joking about it. And a lot of people are like, damn, that girl is wild. I even made a joke about it, but that shit is real. And if you do encounter that, I do believe those people not only deserve treatment and therapy, they do deserve some level of sympathy. I don't really have those type of phobias. I have the more common phobia, like the societal phobia, where something is a faux pas in the society, where many phobias are cultural. Just certain things you just don't do. Like when women wearing pants. When I was a baptized member of Covenant Memorial Baptist Church, women weren't allowed to wear pants inside the sanctum. And not only was it just a rule, we really believed that would bring disfavor on our church, in our community, for men failing to control the women. And Pastor Gene Bowie, who is now gone, who is now, with his bread and honey in heaven, he even said a big part of the downfall of man is a man's failure to control women. That if that even though Eve talked to the serpent and Eve ate the apple, and then Eve gave the apple to Adam, and even though Eve was cursed with the pregnancy, with the pain of pregnancy, and the serpent was cursed to crawl upon his belly. Now, this shit ain't biblical, but it's part of the culture of the. Even though all that, he said Adam was ultimately to blame. Not God though, but Adam was ultimately to blame, because if Adam's pimp hand was strong, now I'm putting my own terminology into it. He didn't say these exact words, but he said if Adam kept a strong pimp hand, then Eve would have never been allowed to wander off on her own to start this ball rolling. So ultimately, you blame, even when a woman misbehaves, it's kind of like a child. If a child misbehaved, then the parents, that's who you sue. So when women misbehave, it can bring misfortune to the man, but it's still the man's fault. So he ran his church. Women weren't allowed to be ministers, deacons, or they could teach children. So the Sunday school class and the women's fellowship, women could have leadership, but the real leadership was men. He was very much, and people look like, oh, he's a backward Christian. And like I say all the time, everybody loves Christianity until some Christian shit happens. But I digress. I was scared of some shit. I had some phobias but anyway, my thought of a misbehaved woman, an uncontrolled woman who is in my life could bring greater misfortune to me. And this wasn't a personal phobia. This is a phobia that was acculturated and enculturated into me through my environment, through my upbringing, through things that I was taught as childhood. And many of our phobias have been indoctrinated into us, from our childhood. And we don't even recognize them as irrational fears because we don't take time to scrutinize, dissect them. They are part of not just our thought process, but our very identity. So I had a lot of those conclusions. And I believe that you only had two choices when you're dealing with a woman: control her or eject her from your life. You either controlled a woman or you got rid of a woman. And a real man was disciplined. So I'm not going to be seduced through her charms, cooking, sex. I'm not going to be seduced by a woman because I am a disciplined man through the help of the Lord and the Holy Ghost, the Holy Trinity. I will control my bestial nature, my flesh, get out my flesh, and I will either control this woman or she will be get thee from mine house. Get thee from my house. And this ain't even alpha male shit. This is biblical. This is spiritual. The woman has a child like I am God's image. She is pulled from my rib. I gave birth to her. I'm responsible for her. She is here to be a help me. All that shit. So that was a phobia I had. One phobia I had coming up, being scared of the wrong shit, is a woman getting control over me, a woman taking power over me, a woman causing me to lose control. And I grew up well into my early 20s, even after I left the church. Most of the things that I was indoctrinated in through being a black Christian, and I was a serious black Christian. My grandmother was a good Christian woman, and she brought up her 5 sons and all her grandsons. I can't count the grandsons. I know me and my brother. She brought us all up in the church, and she didn't take us to none of these liberal Unitarian church. She took us to a fire and brimstone Baptist church, missionary Baptist church. And we weren't just in church on Sundays. We were in church 4 to 5 days a week, and that was outside of revival. And so as a young Christian, I was very studious. I read the shit out of that stupid ass Bible, which I'm so glad I read so much of the Bible, because if I was not properly versed on the Bible, I just went off of faith and belief, I'd still be knee deep in that shit. And I used to go to the pastor with my Bible in hand. I'd go to my grandmother with my Bible in hand. I'd say, can I discuss some passages with you? And my grandmother real quick was like, I'm not talking. Take that shit. Go talk to your uncle. Go talk to Pastor Bowie, who was her brother. Her baby brother was our pastor. She was like, you're not drawing me into this stuff. You're not pulling me in. I'm not discussing, debating, or going back and forth about my Bible and my Lord with you. So my grandmother shut it down quick. But the last conversation I had with my uncle before he died, well before he died, actually, decade before he died, he threatened to hit me in the head. He's like, man, you come talking to me like this, boy, I will go upside your head. You want to play with me? I will go upside your head. And I'm like, well, can't go toe-to-toe with an elder. He don't want to talk. He don't want to debate. He don't want to study. He don't want to help validate or correct. So then I left church. And that was the last conversation me and Uncle Gene had. Because he said, I go upside your head. But even in then, I had a lot of fears. A lot of fears. And it ain't just with women. That's just one. So those are irrational fears that I had that colored many of my relationships as a young man. So that was an irrational fear. Took a lot of energy, took a lot of time. And, you know, here's the thing about something that you are indoctrinated in is you have to constantly, and this is one thing, you always have to constantly examine your conclusions and your points of view. You have to constantly dissect your own conclusions and your own points of view. If you're only going up against, and you don't have to make it public, nobody expects you to make these internal corrections public. Yeah, shoot. Yeah. I mean, a lot of times when you try to talk, they say, believe with your heart, and say, well, my heart came back and told me this is some bullshit. And then they were like, well, believe or I'll put your ass out or beat your ass. My grandmother told me, she said, if you don't want to go to church and you don't want to worship God, you can go to foster care. I ain't going to raise you. I turn you over to the system. It was a bluff. It was a bluff. And I kind of knew it was a bluff. I wasn't a brave kid. Ask anybody that was in East Hills Village around the 80s. I was not the brave kid. I was not. I stayed up on the porch. I didn't jump off the porch. I was not a brave kid. So when grandma said, I'm going to put you out, I'm going to stop taking care, I ain't going to raise you, you're going to be a real orphan, I was like, I can't see grandma doing that. So I'm like, well, I ain't going to church. She's like, all right, when I get back from church, you out of here. She came back to church and fried me some pork chops, and we stopped speaking. And then I just stopped going to church. My uncles, my brother, my sister, everybody went to church. And every Sunday, I had the whole house. It wasn't a house. It was a project apartment, but it was our home. I had the whole home to myself, which was fine with me. Sunday mornings was my time, and that was great. But what's really curious and what kind of gives me pause is, like I said, I was maybe 14, going on 15, when I'm like, I'm done with this church stuff, and this shit ain't adding up. I got knowledge of self. I don't even like saying I got knowledge of self, because Lord Jamal got knowledge of self. So knowledge of self is a little tainted. But I got knowledge of self. And the teachings, the values, the perspectives, the phobias, the fears that I had then followed me well into adulthood. That shit was locked in. It took me quite some time, and it didn't passively go away. I had to actively rearrange my approach and views and perspective. So another fear I had in terms of a woman getting control, a woman dominating me, and I'm going to be the man of the house, all that bullshit, was I really believed there were supernatural forces that could affect me negatively. Of course, when I was younger, it was the devil. Oh, Lord, the devil. Don't let Satan in. Don't look at them nudie pictures. Don't listen to that nasty music. Don't go around them unanointed people. Because if you do, the devil get in your spirit. I mean, right now, Black Christians are afraid to do yoga. Christians walking around stiff, not because they got hang-ups about their religion. Christians walking around stiff because they believe doing downward dog will open up your orifices for Satan to enter. And you don't believe me. You should see, Christians are afraid of joining fraternities and sororities because that takes elevates your academia and elevates your association with these organizations over your elevation, your association with the Lord. Really, I just think Christianity's bum rushing sororities and fraternities because they take dues and they take up a lot of money too. And I know the ministers like, shit, they dipping into my pocket. Kick up that money, ho. Kick up that 10%. So anyway. They out there fight. Hold on. Sorry about that. It's Halloween in my house and shit get crazy. We all high on sugar. Don't even come visit the Kenyattas for another 2 weeks because we're going to be high on sugar. We're going to be out here wilding out. So don't even come see us. Hell yeah. What you think? I don't play about mine. If I'm going to be a bear, I'm going to be a grizzly. Ain't no halfway crooks over here. Anyway, what was I saying? I was talking about, I totally lost it. My son was out in the hallway. I don't know what the hell he was doing, playing a game or something, but wilding. Everybody wilding in this house. Oh, yes. Thank you. Fraternities. So the black church, in terms of when you participate in things that are ungodly, you open yourself up. It's two things. You can open yourself up to possession, where the devil is deliberately acting upon you, or you can open yourself up to losing the blessing of God. So God was going to give you the numbers to play, or God was going to help you pass a test, or God was going to approve you for an auto loan and you don't get the loan. Right? So you're like, damn, I went and filled out this loan application knowing you had a 16 credit, a 2-digit credit score. And you're like, I didn't get the loan. The Lord didn't bless me with that loan. Therefore, what the hell did I do? Where was I at? What have I had that displeased God? That's another phobia that a lot of black people have. And we don't even talk about it. It's so natural and central to our culture. The Lord's will. We think that the Lord's will is acting in our life. And we have to conduct ourselves so that we get the positive outcome and the positive favor of the God. And losing God's favor or attracting the devil's attention, it is crazy to me that in the year 2024, there are fully formed adults. Anthony, I don't think you know how boycotts work. You're boycotting wrong. That's why y'all don't know how to boycott. I'm fine with you doing it, man. Do I need to write up a pamphlet on how boycotts work? Because this ain't it. You're not doing it right. If you hear me saying this, if you hear me saying that you doing this to you right now, you all fucked up in the boycott game. If he was around during civil rights, Anthony'd be like, I'm gonna pay double bus fare until they let Harriet sit up front. But what are you doing here? No, that's not how boycotts work, big homie. Jeez. Anyway, what was I saying? So when I think back on the fears that I had, and like I said, even after I left church, so I can't be like, well, this shit still mess with me. I really believed that supernatural, otherworldly forces could impact my life. And I should conduct myself in such a way to carry favor with these otherworldly supernatural forces. And even after I knew it wasn't the Holy Ghost, it wasn't Jesus Christ, or the all-seeing, all-knowing Lord, when I thought my ancestors, my blood ancestors from my lineage, or my African ancestors can compel me to stand with me, to hold me. And I understand this, and I know I'm going to make some people mad. We abuse and misuse the concept of ancestors and ancestry. We have many of us who become awakened, who become conscious, who become African-centered. We simply take our dysfunction from Christianity and we replace Jesus with Obatala. But we interact with Obatala, Amun-Ra, Yah, Ma'at. We start playing around with Ma'at the exact same way we did with Jesus. And let me tell you, praying to Jesus for an approval on your auto loan, or putting a coconut and lighting a candle on your Orisha altar for an auto loan is the same dysfunction. It's the same dysfunction. African dysfunction is still African dysfunction. Afrocentric pseudoscience is just as pseudo as Eurocentric pseudoscience. We do not just, and when we play around with our shit, with our roots, when we play around shit that is indigenously African, we're doing even a greater harm to ourselves than when we play with white folks shit. If you must play with shit, play with they shit. Play with they shit. Have some reverence and respect for our shit. Even I do. Even though I don't adhere to it, I have greater respect for my shit than I do their shit. And I wouldn't even expect them to respect our shit more than they respect their shit. I mean, but I digress. So I'm telling y'all my fears. And I had all those same fears. And I want to talk about things that we really should fear that we don't fear enough too, if we have time. But yes, supernatural, losing the favor of supernatural forces, or drawing the attention of malevolent supernatural forces, losing my own status and standing as a man, and that is a lot of secular dudes. A lot of these alpha males, they'll never mention Jesus Christ. They'll never mention original sin. They'll never mention the fall of man, the cursing of the land. They'll never mention those things. But if you look at a lot of their rationale where they talk about alpha male, man of the house, high value man, many of it is straight up bastardized from the patriarchal Judeo-Christian tradition. And if they're not bastardizing Christianity, they're bastardizing. And that's why a lot of these alpha males, they convert to Islam real easy. Top G, he converted to Islam. And you'll see a lot of these alpha men and these passport bros, they love going to places like Dubai, United Arab Emirates. You see them making songs, Arab money, and making songs because the elements of that culture is extremely attractive, regardless of how long it's been racist, exploiting, enslaving African people. I can put that aside. I can put that aside because I'm getting mine. And you know people that'll sell you out for a grip. Sell you out for a little cash, a nice house, and a car. So imagine if you, what they'll do to you, if they'll sell you out for a little money, what they'll sell you out for an eternal afterlife with virgins and golden paved streets. But I digress. So that's I'm kind of, no, well, of course, I did a whole show about homophobia. Let's see if it's up here. So I don't have to go over that. Because I feel that I was so homophobic that I should explain to people where I was coming from and how I ended up where I ended up. I don't know. Just search I don't see it here. I don't see it here. Oh, here it is. You can go see that. Check it out. I'll share that. Just go search this video because I don't even have to get into that. But that is a phobia, and it's still a present, clear and present phobia. Where I did this video on my channel, I am a victim of the gay agenda. So when was that? 3 years ago. Jeez, time. So anyway, I was homophobic. I was sexist. I was in fear or believing in supernatural malevolent and benevolent supernatural forces that I could be afraid of. Another thing I had an ongoing fear of is contracting, but it wasn't really a phobia. But I always thought, oh, I'm going to get some. When I was in school and studying human anatomy, human pathology, physiology, and then I went out on the clinical floor and I saw people's bodies being ravaged by chronic and acute, ravaged by disease and infections and, acute injuries, gunshot wounds and open fractures. And I was like, man, it made me become a more cautious person, but it wasn't really a debilitating thing. But I do think that a lot of times we fear ailments that we can take steps to prevent. But go back and watch last Monday's show. I'm also not going to get into that because I think that's been kind of covered. Notice, look at this shit. Anthony, I'm going to go ahead and ignore you. I'm going to help you, aid you in your boycott, and I'm going to start ignoring you until you publicly announce. This is the last time I acknowledge anything you comment or do until you publicly announce that you are rescinding the boycott, that your boycott has failed. And it's not only black men who are labeled homophobic, misogynistic, sexist. It is not exclusive to black men. But if you want to play that, go ahead. Where was I? Oh, so now let's talk about some other irrational fears that I don't necessarily have, but I observed in our community. Another irrational fear that I see popping up quite a bit is the downfall of America. You'll see a lot of people every couple of years or so, they'll talk about, the petrodollars. Oh, India has dropped the American dollar. China has dropped the American dollar. Oh, America's downfall is right around the corner any day now. I've read, when I was a political science student, I used to read these old world pamphlets dating back to the late 1700s, early 1800s. And as far back as the 1700s, Americans have been predicting the imminent downfall of America. And I hear black people always say, oh, any day now, oh, BRICS is going to take down America. When I was younger, and when I was a political science student, it was the Asian dragon and the Asian tiger economy. Japan's going to bring down America. Japan's economy is growing at 5 times the rate. Oh, South Korea is making headway in electronics. And everywhere you go in America, and all the kids are listening to Walkman. If you don't want to know what a Walkman is, all the Walkmans coming out of Japan, all the Toyotas coming out of any day now, America will fall. It was always the downfall of America. Now, I have 2 positions on this phobia. Number 1, why is downfall of America a bad thing? I'm waiting for an answer. Literally screaming through the computer screen. Why do we think that America's downfall is a bad thing? How would it be a negative thing? Why would that be something we are afraid of? Because you personally think that you derive personal benefit from the empire? Those soldiers that you thank for securing your freedom? That's number 1. Number 2, in terms of the downfall of America, who benefits from the average U.S. citizen who ain't got no shit to do with none of this? Multinational corporations, the military industrial state, the billionaire elites. This is games they play up here. We still suffer either way. So the downfall of America has always been predicted, that Americans are always talking about, if Trump gets in, that's the end of democracy. If Kamala gets in, it's going to be, they're going to, what are Kamala hysteria? I can't think of it right now. So here's the reality. The United States, first of all, like as I said, the downfall of America goes back to its very founding. People have been predicting the downfall. What's more likely to happen is that there are many economic, social disruptions and upheavals. And the economic and social disruptions and upheavals do not go far enough and are not sustained over a long enough period of time where it can destabilize the state. The state remains. And what the elites do in a capitalist economy when there is an upheaval or a disruption is that they level all of the burden of the collapse and the burden of the rebuilding falls on the poor and working classes and other scapegoated populations. So what's more likely to happen than the downfall and dissolving of America is cycles of instability and harm. So while you're prepping for the downfall and the breakup, you should be working actively right now, not for what's coming, but for what is. There will be disruptions and upheavals, cycles of dysfunction, cycles of economic constriction, and cycles of what they come to. It's a weird fucking term, austerity, cycles of austerity. And what they have found in these cycles is that communities that have cohesion, that have a level of trust, coordination, cooperation, familiarity, and connectedness are able to weather disruption greater than isolated populations. So you are better off having neighborhood potlucks where people come over and they know your kids and they know you and they're familiar and comfortable with you. You're better off building community connections than you are building a fucking bunker. You're better off, if you want to survive catastrophes and upheavals, build community, not bunkers, throughout the world, whether it is an ecological, an economic collapse, or even a military invasion and overthrow, or simply a downturn in the local economy, or the local Walmart shuts down. Social scientists and researchers have always discovered that the communities that do not suffer the worst ravages of the downfall and ones that recover the quickest are ones that have communal connections and bonds. You have some society where there is a whole tsunami and a nuclear plant meltdown, and they start to recover more rapidly and then you have other communities where it's just the lights can go out for 4 hours because of a transformer break, and there's rioting and cannibalism. So the phobia of the ultimate downfall of America, I'm not saying it's not coming. I don't think that it's possible. But what generally happens, as I have studied the fall of empires, the collapse of empires, before the empire, what we tend to do is look at the great collapse. But what is more important to observe and understand is the erosion. Before there is a collapse, there can be a collapse that lasts over 3 to 4 months or 3 to 4 years, but erosion can literally go on for a century. So as you observe the erosion of the society, you have to pay attention and follow the erosion and the rot. But the problem with the erosion and the rot, there's no explosions, there's no band. You can't build a bunker and go to the firing range. And it's not a fantasy thing. The tedious work of enduring, and sometimes, many times, what you want to do is direct. Because what the U.S. falling is not the problem. The collapse of the United States is not the problem. The problem is what you find with most empires, that they either fall to the left or the right, meaning that the empires will learn to function and operate without having access to the resources of foreign lands, without the ability to exploit and dominate other lands. So they have to begin to cooperate and coordinate internally, or they fall to the right. And the very atrocities that were abroad will be imposed internally. That's why when black folks think, well, yeah, when Trump gets up there, because he's a fucking fascist. And I know we inappropriately use that word fascist. And I'll say it, I've said it before, and just to lock it in. We, U.S. citizens, right now I'm talking about U.S. citizens with the emphasis on black, but I'm talking about people in the United States overall that constantly crying this America's downfall, and keep posting these articles about, oh, China's dumping the American dollars, or Saudi Arabia is going to start selling the amount, and all this stuff about America's imminent downfall. The petrodollar will collapse. And like I said, go back to the 80s. Go get those old books, The Unseen Hand, Conspirators Hierarchy, Behold a Pale Horse. They've been saying this exact same shit. FEMA camps a few years ago, when they first founded FEMA during the Clinton administration, and before, they were like, oh, the FEMA is going to be an internal Gestapo and all this shit. Trump is not a fascist. I mean, Biden is not a fascist. The problem with these people saying fascism, this person's a fascist and it isn't, but I'm not going to argue. I've already explained to people, but people want to be intellectually lazy. See, when somebody say, well, Biden and Trump are fascist, and start to list these things, like there are some people that say anything that someone it's kind of like when conservatives say everything is communist. You'll find a fucking conservative and they'll look at a liberal, they'll look at a progressive, they'll look at a Pan-Africanist, they'll look at anybody who is from a status quo liberal to a far left anarchist, and they're all communists. Oh, it's communism. You want to let boys use girls' bathroom? That's communism. You want to tell me that I have to limit the emissions on my truck? It's communism. I saw an old video where a news report, when they mandated seatbelts. They said seatbelts are now mandated in all U.S. cars, and you can get a fine of $50 or more if you're seen driving your car without a seatbelt. And there was an old white man saying, this is communism. So leftists and liberals call everything they see coming from the right, it's all, everybody I don't like is fascist, and everybody they don't like, but I'm not engaged in that, and I'm not interested in that intellectual laziness. If it's all fascism, you can turn off the BroDiallo show, because ain't nothing I can tell you. You've already pretty much put all these people in the bowl. And like I said, if you were part of the U.S. intelligence apparatus, CIA, FBI, BATF, if you walked into one of their conferences, or if you logged into one of their sessions and said, all black people are the same, an N-word is an N-word is an N-word, they were like, you don't belong up here in the strategizing room. You're cannon fodder. You're a low-level thinker, and you're a low-level functioning. So you go down there and we'll give you a gun and tell you who to shoot. But as far as strategizing, planning, you don't have the intellectual capacity. So if you're talking about resisting and opposing opposition and reaching out to other people about the systems and institutions of global white domination, imperialism, capitalism, and you say, well, Biden and Trump are the same. They're all the same. They're all fascist. Then you don't belong here. Go down there. Go join a RBG gun club. Go over there, because we are here about real analysis. We are here about real analysis. The only bad white people are not fascists. There are bad, in fact, fascism. We have more than 1,000 years of European imperialism, European atrocities, European genocides that predate fascism. So when I say someone is not a fascist, that doesn't mean that they're good. That just means their point of view, their approach, their methods, strategies, and outlooks and platform are different. And I've explained this so many times. George Washington was an enslaver, a colonizer, and a genocider, but he wasn't a fascist. Fascism did not exist. Just like capitalism is a relatively new system. You couldn't even have capitalism without living. Capitalism goes back to the Victorian era. White people were conquesting and committing genocide and conquest on foreign lands on the African continent before capitalism. That is not to say capitalism is good, but every genocider is not a capitalist. Every genocider is not a fascist. Fascism is a very unique manifestation from Western culture. It is a very unique framework, mindset, and has very specific tactics and approaches. And a lot of these black people calling Biden a fascist, They're like to call Biden a fascist because really, if they really grasped and understood what fascism truly was, they would find that they got a few toes and a few fingers in the fascism box they damn self. Go back and watch my video where I talked about chocolate-coated fascism and the components and aspects of fascism that are attractive to a lot of black men who were brought up in this reactionary, chauvinist, patriarchist system, and why you find so many black men that when they leave the left, they go to the right. When they leave liberalism, they go to far right extremism instead of coming to far leftism. And I'm going to thank you. Fascism is capitalism's immune system. But I digress. Anybody sitting and saying Biden and Trump are fascist, they don't understand fascism. They don't understand the nature of the internal conflicts of the U.S. power structure. And they don't want to understand. They want to be lazy. And I'm fine with that. I don't even have a problem with that. They're all the white man, the devil. They all devils. Fine. I'm not going to argue with you. I'm just going to say, yes, you don't want to be engaged in analysis and critique. You don't value it. And that's fine. Just get out there and bang on the system. I used to call cats like that Action Jackson. You ain't with all this talking and pondering you about it. Woo, 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 woo. Go out and do that shit. Oh, thank you. I take that as a compliment. I've read a few of his books, especially his work on neurodivergence and epigenetics. Yeah, Dr. Tom Hartman, thank you. I love when people think they're insulting me when I think it's a compliment, but I digress. I was about to say something. But I digress. In fact, American atrocities predate fascism, which is a uniquely Western Europe phenomenon that infiltrated the United States. That's why I don't even like the term neo-Nazis, because the neo-Nazis were actually the Nazis. Nazism in Europe was born of Americanisms. So the Nazis should be more appropriately called neo-Americans, because racism here laid the groundwork for modern industrial racism in Western Europe. But I continue to digress. To digress. Where were we? And people take me off. What was I saying? Oh, the phobias. Let's get back to phobias. I gotta stop looking at and can I say, let me say this before I go on, because I'm guilty of that as well. I'm like, back in the day, I'd be like, Obama's a fascist, they're all fascists. Just dismissing, bunch of fascists, government's fascists. That's all well and good till some actual fucking fascists show up. And I'm like, oh shit, we gotta be more clear, more concise. There comes a time when you're concise. If you have a common cold, or you got the flu, say, I'm sick, I got the bug. But when that shit starts to become terminal, you got to be more specific and more deliberate in your diagnosis. And I'm even guilty of that. But I think we've reached a point where we can't just denounce our opposition as, oh, they're all fascist, and leave it at that. Okay, what are you saying, Cheryl? Getting us off the topic. The thing about helping someone that's confused about the truth is they have to want to be helped. They have to be, some people, if someone reaches the wrong conclusion based on putting forth effort to seek out the right conclusion, but some people, like I said, it's intellectual laziness. And then people have what is called the fallacy of former investment. You'll notice what made Malcolm X such a phenomenal individual. Malcolm X, if you read his writings, he wasn't the most scholarly brother. He wasn't the most brilliant brother. He had a lot of flaws. But what makes Malcolm X worthy of our awe and our recognition is the fact that he was constantly evolving. And that is very hard. That is an extremely difficult thing to do. I know people I've been organizing with, people that I've been hanging around since I was 14. And a lot of times you'll find people that are proud to say, I've been on the same shit since I was 12. I've been on this shit. I've been on it from day one. It is very hard to evolve one's positions, beliefs, values, approaches, conclusions. It is almost a superhuman skill. So generally, if you reach someone that has found, and another thing, people are less concerned with being correct than they are with being comfortable. So a lot of times when people can reach a conclusion or a point of view that makes them feel comfortable, that makes them feel validated, there's almost no evidence in the world that can get them to change. None whatsoever. So, to quote the Bible, since we've been down on the Bible, let's give the Bible some props. Don't cast pearls before swine. I do think it is our obligation that if we are engaging or speaking publicly, we make sure we are evidence bound. When you're speaking or sharing something publicly or just amongst your friends, you have obligations to make sure you are grounded, evidence and fact-based, that you have all the proper empathy and sympathy as you are articulating this. But how people take it, that's not your responsibility. Whether or not they're willing to learn or accept what you're sharing, that's on them. But what's on you to say, hey, I put the right shit out there. I shared the right shit. I gave the backup. I gave grounded, sincere, honest analysis, and you can take it and you can build on it, or you can reject it because it don't sound good. It don't make you feel right. But whatever you do with it, that's on you. Once you put it out there, it belongs to them. Let them run with it. Anyway, let's get back to some other fears. I was talking about the fear of the downfall of America. We need not fear the imminent collapse of America, but we need to observe and function as though we are in a society that will go through cycles of prosperity. And by prosperity, it's not true prosperity. That means you can buy shit. This is a consumerist society. So society is good when I'm able to pay my bills and buy shit, regardless of, the quality of those goods or the contamination in my body. And we live in a society, a dysfunctional society, but it goes through cycles of dysfunction. And if you get caught up trying to look at the imminent end, understand, how do you endure cycles as you resist the system overall, as you work to dismantle, to counter, to subvert the system, as you endure the cycles of the system. So we don't need to fear the fall. And we don't need to celebrate, like, I don't need to organize, I don't need to build, I don't need to educate myself, because pretty soon I'll wake up one day and America will be done. America will fall. And all the nukes will be decommissioned, all the foreign military bases will be shut down, all the accounts of the billionaires will be closed. There's nothing to back that up. And believe you me, if there was any evidence to back that up, I would jump on this screen and get on this camera and say, oh, it's a wrap, y'all. It's a wrap. I got my shovel and my pistol. I'm about to head into the woods. You looking for me? Go to Michigan. Go to the Michigan forest, and I'll be there digging a trench. And if it came to that, it could, but it's not likely. And even though we can't predict the future, we do have historical precedents. Another thing that Black folks that I hear from Black people, another phobia, another irrational fear, is of immigrants and immigration. Black people believe that immigration hurts us, which is very peculiar. And so now we believe that the Venezuelan immigrants hurt us. Before the Venezuelans, it was the Mexican immigration that were hurting us. Even way back in the post-Vietnam War era, the Hmong, the Vietnamese immigrants are hurting us. And then you go back to the 50s and the post-Korean War, and then the Koreans were coming here. The Koreans are hurting us. You go all the way back to the era of Ellis Island. The Italian immigrants, the Irish immigrants are hurting us. The immigrants are hurting us. I have some bad news for you, Black people. I have some really bad news for Black folks. It is not immigration that's hurting us. And I know that's hard to accept because they come and take your job. They come and take your job. That's a myth. No one can take a job. No one takes a job, especially not undocumented or new immigrants. Nobody's taking your fucking job. Jobs are not taken, they are granted. They are given. Jobs are granted and given by the owners of the means of production. We call them capitalists. Capitalists give jobs. Capitalists have one goal when it comes to jobs. Extract as much labor as you can with giving as little reward as possible. Every single employer under capitalism, every capitalist employer seeks to take as much from you as they can without you dying and give you as little as possible to keep you alive to continue to work. So the reason why migrant labor is more attractive than citizens is not because the migrant comes and speaks in broken English and say, hey man, give me your job, give me the black job, give me the black job. Nobody takes a job, and we know this. I don't know why black people, we've been in this country the longest and we understand it the least. You'll never have a cousin, auntie, homeboy. Your husband will never come home and be like, baby, I just took a job. We never use language of taking jobs when we get a job. When we get a job, I don't care if you CEO, nobody takes a job. We all understand that jobs are given. But some of the most vulnerable people in our society, the undocumented people, we believe that they have a power that no citizen has, which is to walk up to an employer and take a job. So the reality is the migrants are attractive as employment because of their vulnerability. Because you don't have to give them proper equipment. You don't have to pay Social Security. You don't have to respect their basic human or civil rights. So our problem is not that people are taking jobs from us. Our problem is that we sell our labor in a capitalist job market, and our labor is not organized. The solution to black under and unemployment, the solution to black under compensation is not to attack immigrants. It is to attack capitalism, and to organize with other people who have to sell their labor, even if they don't come here. Because guess what happens? If the exploited labor is not allowed to come into this country, they will bring the jobs to the exploited labor. So it is maddening to me. I can see maybe if you're an old migrant worker, or if you're an old black worker from the 1800s to the early 1900s, to be talking that they taking our good jobs. And guess who used to be the job taker? Go read those books, The Warmth of Other Suns, and other groups dealing with what is the lie, the fallacy of the Great Migration. There was no Great Migration in this motherfucking country. Stop saying Great Migration. I can't kick in your fucking front door, murder your spouse, set your house on fire, and when you gather up your children and other relatives and run out the front door, I'd be like, wow, look at that dude. Look at that family migrating. We were expelled. We were expulsion. Ethnic cleansing. Now, white folks are very clear on that shit when it suits their end. When you look at the Bosnia, they didn't call Bosnians, they were being ethnically cleansed, not migrating. Even in Palestine, you don't hear nobody be like, look at all those Palestinians, great migration out of Palestine. They understand that it is an expulsion and it is an act of genocide. But when we did it, when we got exposed from land we had been cultivating for the last 200 years, we want to act like we were a bunch of birds and we saw a snowflake and we're going to fly away. Stop saying the fucking great migration. Say the great expulsion. Say the great land theft. They stole over $1 trillion of our wealth. Don't say nothing about no acrylic fingernails, eyelashes, and Michael Jordans. And I'm not saying reparations. That's a whole nother accounting. That's a whole nother set of funds. I'm not saying reparations. I'm saying shit we had earned and accumulated ourselves. They took over $1 trillion worth of land and resources away from Africans during the so-called migration. Migration is something birds do in the wintertime and follow the magnetic field of the earth. We didn't migrate from the south to the north. We were expelled from the south to the north. And when we got to the north, guess what the poor white folks in the north were saying? Blacks are coming here taking our jobs. You had white managers and white foremen that say, hey, another 250 Negroes arrived in Harlem this week, and they'll do your job for half the price. And we were the job takers. Even though we understood we the last hired, first fired. And they would threaten white workers with giving their job to the colored. I got a farmhand from the dirty South that'll come in this shipyard, will come in this factory and be glad to do your job. And I won't have to hear no talk back. And did the white working class attack the manager? Did they attack the foreman? Did they bum rush the owner? Did they burn down the corporate headquarters? No, they started attacking us. And what did that gain them? Not a goddamn thing. And now what are we doing? Same dumb shit. They are not our teachers. And immigration does not harm us. Because all you got to do, I've been in this city since 2008. I've been living in Chicago. And I'm hearing black people in the streets write the blood clot now, swearing shit was a utopia before the Venezuelans got here. Before they gave Venezuelans $50 million of our money, before the Venezuelans got here, shit was all good for black folks. I'm like, why did nobody else tell me? Because I've been seeing the displacement, the oppression, the disruption. In fact, before the Venezuelans got here, every single ethnic group, every single racial demographic in the city of Chicago was on the up, except for black people. Black people were being expelled from the city. Because instead of solving and dealing with the crime and dysfunction in our community, the Chicago Police Department and the local government of Chicago have a containment policy. There are lawless abandoned zones where you can do whatever you want, but if you cross a line, there are gangs that have been killing hundreds of people. Hundreds of people. South of 71st Street. South of Roosevelt Avenue, gangs were acting with impunity. And there was one shooting in the Gold Coast. And the same gang that had killed hundreds of people on the south side, they did one shooting on the Gold Coast, and they blew up the whole goddamn gang. They swear there have been unsolved murders all throughout the south side. There's so much homicide on the south side of Chicago, they think there's at least 2 active serial killers. Killings that don't have any affiliation with the drug trade or gangs. And you go look at the aftermath of the shooting on the Gold Coast and how they wrap that shit up real quick. But now those same people who lived through that along with me are acting like, oh, shit was good till the Venezuelans got here and took all our money and took all our jobs. So if you were in Chicago and shit was good back then, why didn't y'all tell me? Where was the black utopia on the south side of Chicago that the Venezuelans have destroyed? It's a phobia. It's a phobia. So what is appropriate? Black people are stepping stones. If you come to the United States, you will have to step on, exploit, and abuse African population in order to get wealth. There's no source of wealth in this country that is not the result of racism and exploitation. So yes, I don't care if they're anti-Castro Cubans, Korean migrants, Hmong refugees, or even the Venezuelans that come here that say, hey, I'm going to put down some stakes in the United States and I want to build a future for my family and I want to elevate in the class structure. Then you will have to not only exploit black people, you're going to have to adopt a racist, anti-black point of view because that's the only way to make it. And I got another secret for black folks. That rule applies to wealthy black people. That rule applies to wealthy black people. It ain't just the white elite, the so-called, there's no such thing as a Hispanic or a Latino, but y'all play around. I think we need to start calling conquistadors. If you come from south of the border and you ain't indigenous and you ain't African, then you're a conquistador. So if you're a conquistador, if you're a white Anglo-Saxon Protestant, if you are a African immigrant from the African continent, if you are black, foundational America, that dumb shit. If you are African descendant of slavery and you say, I want the bag, Jay-Z exploited the black community, preyed upon the black community, and distanced himself from the black community. Puff Daddy, Oprah Winfrey. And I'm just naming these people because they're publicly known. But you go get your local multimillionaire. Capitalism requires to raise up the hierarchy. You have to stomp down the people on the lower hierarchy. Black capitalists need exploited labor as much as white capitalists do. So yes, you are right when you say these people come here to exploit us. That's the only way to get ahead. But in the same breath, people talking about people coming to exploit us. Most of the public figures that complain about people exploiting us, they're mad because they are getting in line in front of them. Because I should be the exploiter. What the fuck you think the ADOS, Uncle Tom's, handkerchief head coons are going to do when they get their reparations check? They're going to buy stock in Lockheed Martin. They're going to send their children to be indoctrinated in Ivy League institution. What every black person out here talking that nonsense about a generational curse. So you have to join the exploiters. So the reality is, African people, our problem has never been migrants. And I understand if you're only looking at the surface, if you don't want to do a deeper analysis, if you just want to lash out and throw a tantrum, if you want to have an ideological, political tantrum, you can say, you can blame the migrants. Some of y'all are even dumb enough to get behind Trump and fascist, actual bona fide fascist, and say, hey, let's kick them all out. As if shit was good for us before they got here. If shit was good for us before they got here. And yes, I agree with you. I will grant you. The reality is anybody coming to this country, whether they're born in this country or coming to this country, is going to have to prey upon the African community. Just like you can't come here and prosper without taking native land. If you want to buy some property, it's native land. It's like certain givens. But we either change the system or we become complicit in the system. But what we do is attack scapegoats. How the fuck do we have people out here mad at Venezuelan refugees and they not mad at Elon Musk? Elon Musk, who has taken billions of dollars of tax dollars and squandered it. SpaceX has contracts with the U.S. government and has fallen short on all of its government obligations. The Boring Company has gotten millions of dollars of government subsidies and government tax set aside. And you don't hear nobody. They're like, oh, he a baller. I'm trying to get like that. So that is a phobia. Now, the reality is anti-Blackism is almost a prerequisite. But again, this is not a feature of migrants. This is a feature of capitalism and white hegemony. And when you attack the scapegoats, when you attack the symptoms of capitalism and white hegemony, you strengthen and you validate capitalism and white hegemony. You think Trump, racist Trump, is going to save you from racist migrants. So our real mission is to have solidarity with the ideological, communist, socialist, anti-imperialist from all communities and all cultures. And if you come here and you want to be a patriot and a right wing, which many of them do, there's a whole Hispanics for Trump. Many of the Latinos come here so-called Latinos. Many of the conquistadors come here and they get right with the racist program. They're to the point they join the neo-Nazis, another fallacious term. They join neo-Nazi groups and right-wing groups. They get white as quick as they can. Yeah. Same thing with many African migrants coming here, Ghana and Nigeria. They have anti-black and Western supremacists, if not white supremacy. They believe that Western culture worse than values. And they want to ask what's wrong with black people because we've been here. And I say this is another sensitive thing to say. Black people, the fact that we overall fail at capitalism is not a blight against us. It's a testament to our humanity. And I'm going to let that stand. But let's open this up because I only got less than 30 minutes left. Let's talk about some other phobias. I got a lot of phobias on this list. It's quite peculiar. Let me talk about crime too. And groomers, that groomer shit. Here's the thing about it. And I talked about this last week. I heard it would take I thought I'm ignoring that guy. Sorry. Anyway, I've shared the link. Feel free to come on live if you have a question, comment, criticism. But I did want to talk about, let me say thank you to Super Stickers. Sekum, thank you for the contribution. Stephen Smith, thank you for the contribution. Y'all be giving before. I didn't even take out the digital plate, past the digital collection plate. But I digress. Crime, that's another thing. Buying guns, again, a lot of things that we think buying guns, building for, putting in security systems, community. One of the things that can make your community safe is not everybody having gun, but people being willing and able to walk in the community and be outside. That's one of the things that is seen, community connections. But I can talk about that. There's been so many social scientists. The 1350 bullshit. There's a white racist trope saying that black people only make up 13% of the U.S. population and commit 50% of the crimes. And it's from an old, outdated, and debunked FBI statistics. But I'm talking about black people. Here's the bottom line. As far as guns, most African people, you are more likely, if you're going to suffer physical harm, it's going to be someone you already knew. Whether that is an assault or essay, you're more likely to suffer harm from somebody that is familiar with you and in your home. Not a drag queen at a library reading books to children. It's more likely that you can be attacked in places like your home and your church, especially for young, vulnerable populations. Also, we are more likely to be injured or die from chronic disease than we are to be shot in the drive-by, a la Boys in the Hood. So dealing with chronic ailments and holistic health is more as important as dealing with, especially when you get up to the older age. What's up, Don?
BroDiallo.
I can hear you.
Oh no, why are we not having it? Testing 1 2.
I can't hear you. Mute it. Turn on your device. I told you all this blaspheming. The Lord is like, I was on my way to
testing 1 2
the atrocities in the Congo, but then I hear somebody spitting dirt on my name, so I'm gonna go fuck with his audio instead of, emancipating some victims of international trafficking. Mysterious ways. That'll get you out of a lot of shit. I can't hear you, Don. I can't hear you. I don't know what you done did. What bill you failed to pay.
Hey, don't do me like that.
It's a problem on my end? Ain't no way. Can y'all hear me? Y'all can hear him? I don't know. Oh, let me test my speaker. Hold on. Not working right. Man, listen. I'm hard times. Now my speakers ain't working. Let me make sure the audio's up. I don't even have that. What kind of computer do I have? Hello?
Okay, I didn't.
Yeah, it is on my end. Hold on.
Okay.
This is. I shouldn't be saying these things. The man don't want you to hear what I have to say. Yeah, my speakers ain't working. And I don't know what I done did. Mute, open. Hold on. Yeah, my speakers don't work. I can talk, but I can't hear. I don't listen anyway.
Ain't that the
So
truth?
my wife would probably be like, yeah, your computer's acting like you. Okay, I can hear you now. Say something.
Testing 1 2 Uhuru.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, that was on me.
Okay.
I don't know what happened with this computer.
You sure? I just ran across this house like a chicken with the head cut off and scared the hell out of my mother. Anyway, so on
it's
the
Halloween, so it's Halloween season, so
right, because that sweater is killing me. I need you to know that, killing me.
What sweater
that you got on?
This ain't no sweater.
You don't have a shirt on?
No, yeah, I have on a regular shirt. If you see something other than just a normal shirt, it could be the demonic forces at work.
Anyway, so we having I don't know if you know, but the Black is Back Coalition is having our November 2nd march on the White House and we'll have the second annual march here in LA as well. So I'm handing out propaganda and stuff like that. And so on the note of phobias, right, I'm here in Orange County, California, which is is a hotbed, right? It's mostly white folks and stuff like that. When you end up seeing black folk, it'd be like thank God some us's, right? And very few black gatherings and stuff like that. So I'm at one of these Trader Joe's in Anaheim, California, or as we like to call it, Anacrime. And whenever I see some melanated folk, I'm handing them, because I'm still getting used to, just handing out this type of propaganda to, all folks in the community and stuff like that. So mostly when I see some melanated,
shame on you.
Yes, shame on me, right? Shame on young me for this second march that I didn't participated in and stuff like that, But anyway, so I remember approaching two people, they seem to be as melanated as possible, as melanated as you could get, here in Orange County, California. And I said in my little thing, all I say is, Black People's March for Political Power in LA, November 2nd, scan QR code. And Klanaheim, I'm deceased. Perfect. It works so well. But do you know that I had this woman say to me, we don't like political power. So I wanted to introduce that literally just because of that line that I heard from handing out propaganda at the Trader Joe's, right? I wanted to get you to do that one as a phobia, political power.
Yeah, I think a lot of black people are anti-power because we've been victimized and abused by power. So we think it's akin to when Walter Rodney wrote about Africans in agriculture in Guyana post-slavery, and many of the East Asian or East Indian migrants came there and were very eager to get into agriculture and the agricultural trade, and the Africans wanted to migrate to the city and live modern lives because they associate agricultural work with slavery and toil. And so it's a bad thing, even though that was a key source of power and wealth building within a semi-agrarian, semi-industrial society. But the Africans had a lot of distaste in Guyana. They had a very, visceral distaste for the land. And so when you talk about power or the quest for power, it is understandable that black people think wielding or the seeking of power is inherently insidious. It is inherently insidious, and that it is a better position to be where you are in a position to counsel power or to make an appeal to power. So Dr. King, our greatest hero, he never sought to take power. He wanted the people to use he wanted benevolent power over him. So he would protest, he would demonstrate, he would engage in activism, not to overthrow the government, but to compel the government to live up to the content of its creed. And so many of our heroes are not people who engage in overthrow or conquest, but those who were able to tell truth to power, speak truth to power, even if your voice trembles. So that is a component of our, and that's why, we said now, Black Power, there was a huge debate and a lot of internal conflict when Kwame Ture and the SNCC, Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, said we're going to make a call for Black Power.
Right.
That wasn't embraced by the Black masses.
Mm.
They felt it was too confrontational. It gave too much legitimacy to the militant and Black separatism. How dare you talk about Black power? And even when Black people make moves for political power here, under our various bureaucrats, under what's his name, Harold Washington.
Mm.
Harold Washington went through great lengths when he took political power to assure the white ethnic groups who had been abusing power and abusing Black people for decades, letting the Greeks and the Polish and the Irish and the various white ethnic groups and white power factions that he didn't intend to get any retribution, that he was going to be more than fair. So even though it was an imbalance on behalf of whites against Blacks, he didn't intend to create an imbalance on behalf of Black people in favor of whites.
Mm-hmm.
He was going to create equality by giving equal support to in unequal condition. So yeah, it is very true. I mean, Claude Anderson, when he went with his public campaign for powernomics, he lamented the fact that Black people that were given power did not exercise it. He talked about Black enclaves, like when Black people had the majority vote in places like Detroit, D.C., and other inner cities in the 80s, when white people went out and created the suburbs and abandoned the urban core. Black people became the core of the urban majority, and we took power and we didn't exercise power. I mean, there was a simple saying, when you have power, use power, that Bobby E. Wright used to say, when you have power, use power. But yeah, I'm surprised someone could be so clear and honest about the fact that Black people have an aversion to power.
Yeah. So, because at first, before your, very succinct right response, and I definitely wanted to unite with your response just now. At first, I was gonna say, do you think it's just like people don't know what political power is? But I feel like, especially given your response and the context that you invoke, right? It's not a lack of awareness of political power. It is literally a fear, right? Then a fear of wielding or actually using it, right? Because of the play, it may jeopardize, right, one's current status or place or whatever, right? Okay, so one more, BroDiallo, and I'm gonna throw at you, and I'm gonna definitely leave you alone. So, right, voting is coming up, right? The the electoral process and stuff like that. We understand that voting is a democratic rights. So I wanted to present literally the concept of democratic rights to you as another phobia, right? Unfortunate phobia of the community, and get your breakdown on that.
Well, a lot of times when people fear something, they will distort or redefine it so that it is palatable to them and makes them comfortable. We have been indoctrinated to believe that democracy means being allowed to choose your representative. Democracy literally means the will of the people, rule of the people. The demos means people. And so in a theocracy, ocracy means power. So a theocracy means rule of religion. A monarchy means the rule of a king or a monarch. An oligarchy means the rule of oligarchs. Demos or democracy means rule of the people. And I've even said to people, when you have elected officials, bureaucrats, and representatives put into office, you still have to exercise your authority and impose your authority. And I've had activists, people who have ran for political office, who believe that once you vote, that's your obligation. Your civic duty is fulfilled. When voting is the lowest level of democracy, asserting and your will and imposition of consequences for those who fail to meet the will, you do more in a democracy to educate and coordinate and fuse the masses of the people than you do in voting. So most people don't want democracy. They're not interested in the will of the people because they're individualistic. So when people go to vote, they don't vote as far as the will or to advance the interests of the people. They go and vote their own. People vote their pocketbooks. I'm voting because I don't like the price of gas. I'm voting because I don't like Kamala, how she was a prosecutor. They're not really thinking collectively as the will or interest of their cohort or their collective. They don't even function or dwell within a collective. I have to say to people in Chicago all the time, we need to live in our communities, not simply live in our homes. And black folks, you'll find they'll be like, yeah, my house is straight. I make sure my kids ain't out on these streets. I take care of mine. I pay my bills. That is very low level functioning. So we do fear democracy, as did the elites. But the elites have distorted what democracy meant. The United States was supposed to have democratic validation for an oligarchical system. They wanted democratic legitimacy because they always saw the rule. The best or easiest way to enslave someone is to give them the impression that they're free. And that comes from B.F. Skinner and that other weirdo cracker. But you give the impression that they're free. So the people who founded this democracy, which is really an oligarchy, understood we just overthrew a monarch. We just overthrew a monarch, and we want to create a hierarchy, not based on blood, but based on property. Because before, if you had royal, you could have all the property, be the best merchant, own all these ships. But if you ain't royal, there's only so high. So we want to transform from a monarchical hierarchy to an economic hierarchy, a property-based hierarchy. But the demos, the people, are a threat. And they would talk about this thing they call leveling impulses. And the leveling impulses of the people is to try to, they would want to rise certain groups up and bring other groups down because they want to have some level of justice and parity and leveling. So they had to create a democracy in form that did not bow down to the leveling impulses, or what they call the tyranny of the majority. So how do we give the majority a say in the government without the becoming the tyranny, or as communists call it, the dictatorship of the majority? So anyway, this is a very sophisticated system, which is why we can't just say they're all fascists. You can't just look at this system and say, oh, it's fucked up, it's bad, and I'm gonna move on. Because scientists, psychologists, social engineers, a lot of thought has gone, and because it's evil, we just think it's evil. Mm-hmm. But they've been talking about the evil genius since the Victorian era. This is a genius system.
Yes.
And we think, well, bad and smart is good. Being a genius is good. So you can't be, if you're a genius and you have money, then you got to be Batman. We don't understand the concept, even though they write it and put it in books and publish it, of the evil genius. This system is a masterpiece.
Oh, yeah.
It is a masterpiece that has endured many things that would have taken out more just systems. But all that to say is,
an entire states and stuff like that, yeah.
That you rule. But rulership is not given to you by God. That was a lie they told. All man is endowed by, we were not endowed by rights and powers by a creator. What has endowed the demos, the masses of the people or communities, with power is their ability and willingness to sacrifice their individual aspirations for the good of the collective. Yes. That's what endows us with power. By them telling us our power has come from the creator, and our freedom comes from the creator, our liberty comes from the creator, and our liberty is stewarded or controlled by the state. That is fucking wrong. The anarchists knew this. The socialists understood this. The early communists and socialists understood this. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So God gives you your freedom, and the state is the steward or the manager of your freedom. When we give legitimacy to the state, but then that requires me to be engaged in civic life and have a civic. That means that my own personal aspirations and goals have to be subverted to and aligned with what's good for the collective, which means I can't have the private jet and ball till I fall. I can't fully give myself over to the creative. Sometimes my own intellectual or personal property will have to be held in common. So many people don't want democracy, not so much because they don't want freedom, but they don't want the sacrifices. Freedom has been distorted. Freedom is not the ability to do whatever you want to do. A lot of times freedom is defined as you being able to determine how you serve and how you cooperate and coordinate. So yes, most people that complain
reproduction of
about
life.
democracy, what they really want, because a lynch mob can be democratic. Do you want to burn this Negro alive, or do you want to hang him from a tree? A lynch mob can be democratic. So rule of the people is something that even people who complain, oh, we got these two parties, we got Democrats and Republicans. Politics is not the ballot box. And you are very right. And the way to fix that is to we awaken and demonstrate to the people their own power. A grassroots, bottom up power. The power must come from bottom up instead of from top down.
On that note, viewers, join the Vanguard, join the African People's Socialist Party, join the Black is Back Coalition. Uhuru. Have a good night, BroDiallo.
All right, bro. Sorry about the problems and the issues coming early. Do you also discount liberation theology? Yes, I think liberation and theology are an anathema. I don't think liberation, there is no theology that grants liberation. Like by definition and practice, theology or religion means to bind you. And the basic thing, if theology was liberating, you wouldn't have to call it liberation theology. This is kind of akin to when I was in some grocery store, and the grocery store had a health food section. And I'm like, wow, why are people just walking around? That is, all food should be about healthing and nourishing our bodies. So the fact that you have to have a health food section saying everything else. So you can have liberation. You don't need theology for liberation. And I understand a lot of people want to be able to hold on to this oppressive, anti-human institution, this irrational institution, this baseless institution of theology, otherworldly supernatural events. So liberation can resist tyrants. Religions can resist theology, but liberation cannot liberate people. That's not why liberation was not founded. Theology was not founded to liberate people, but to guide and control people. Okay, the boycott is over. All right. All right. I'm glad to hear that. I don't want to be boycotted. I'm in enough trouble already. Don mentioned the Black is Back coalition. I don't think it's a political party. It's a political action or a political network or political action committee. Glenn Ford is one of the founders, the late, great Glenn Ford. And so it is the Black is Black coalition. They have a pretty good presence on the internet to get information on how to join and everything. But it's Black is Back. Black is Back. Capitalism has always been in the world. Mark Milner is poorly educated. Whoever your economics or history teacher is, they should be called on the carpet because your economics and your history teacher has failed you, Mark. So I'm not even going to blame you for that. Bless your heart. You don't know no better. But capitalism has not always been in the world. I mean, shit. The history of capitalism has been written and articulated by anti-capitalists and pro-capitalists. You read Adam Smith, who is the father of capitalism, or you meet Karl Marx, who is the chief opponent, philosopher, anti-capitalist, and both of them have a start date when capitalism came into the world. I mean, how are you going to have capitalism without surplus black value? Gone somewhere. Where else were we? Oh, there he is, Don. African People's Socialist Party. Oh, I'm sorry. African people. I thought he was talking about the black is black because you came. Okay, that's it. If you want to know what Don was talking about. Oh, we over time. You can go give money while you worship God. I don't know. People just saying, right? Okay, nobody talking. Y'all talking to each other. You're not talking to me. Anthony asked, BroDiallo, where did we, man, woman, come from? No God, some supernatural bang force created us and our journey. The Big Bang was not a bang like an explosion. The Big Bang is a singularity. There is physical, astrological evidence of a singularity from which matter, time, and space originated at a single point in the universe. There is evidence to back up what is commonly called the Big Bang Theory, but it was not an explosion. It's the time where time and matter originated in the universe. Also, man and women, human beings evolved. But long before human beings evolved, sex and sexual characteristics and sexual reproduction evolved. We all evolved from less complex organisms and organisms and less complex cellular structures. So human beings evolved from lesser primates. That's where we came from. We evolved. There's also evidence to back that up. And then you do have theories of abiogenesis and all of that. So, but I don't know if you're still talking about disparaging the Big Bang and all that shit, you are not prepared to have a discussion about abiogenesis. Let's say a crazy delusion of a great white man sitting on a throne, magic wand in his hand. Oh, dang. Hey, Comrade Trav, man, we need to talk. Whatever happened to our conversations? Let me tell you, these dudes be leading you on. I thought we were supposed to have a conversation with Skip. Let's make that happen, Captain. But thank you for the contribution. Generous. Please show evidence for whatever God. Okay. I misread. He was asking me a comment about capitalism. Okay. I've never read on my grade level. Oh, you were asking. No, capitalism hasn't always been in the world. No. And capitalism is the reason why we think capitalism is much more pervasive than it is because it's been so destructive. It is one of the most destructive concepts. But capitalism came about as we understand it in the Victorian era, and you have things like surplus value and limited liability and things of that nature. There are some progenitors. So you had mercantilism, or as Wise Intelligent called it, crackantilism. You had mercantilism, which was a progenitor. So, but capitalism was developed over stages as a byproduct of European industrialization and European conquest and genocide. So capitalism is a system that was developed, but there had to be certain infrastructure, certain production modes and things in place before you could even have capitalism. So yeah, capitalism is a relatively new system, and capitalism, and I have to tell, because so many people are under the impression that if I have a business, if I'm engaged in capital, if I'm buying and selling and trading, then I'm being engaged in capitalism. That is not capitalism. Markets, buying, selling, trading, currencies, all existed prior to capitalism. Capitalism did not really invent anything. Capitalism has engulfed these things. Capitalism has imposed itself on these things. So that is what you must do. But anyway, I have to wrap this up. I appreciate this. I'm sorry. I try to leave more time for Q&A. If I didn't get to your comments, please send me the comment over time. Maybe we can pick it up later. And I appreciate y'all. Shout out, tune in to the Rational Radicals. Go subscribe to the African World Order YouTube channel. Let me see if I can just show y'all that this is a new channel. We have a new show coming up on the African World Order channel. And you're really going to like it. We got 2 new shows in the works. So go check it out. Go subscribe. And also, oh shit, this computer is just wilding out on me. What did I do? I'm gonna just restart this whole shit. Anyway, go subscribe to African World Order. If you like the Rational Radical show and other shows we got, it's a little too early to name, but follow us. You can go follow African World Order. Go to AfricanWorldOrder.com to find out what's going there. And it's a lot of big things. I'm very excited about this and the venture coming here. And this is not just a YouTube channel. It's a whole organization that we're building for politics, organization, and everything from the ground up. So African World Order, AWO, check it out. And I got some other even more things coming. So there's a lot going on, but ain't a damn thing happening. I do really appreciate y'all. Like, share, subscribe. Please support the BroDiallo show, Patreon, Cash App, Venmo. Thank you to everyone that sent in a super sticker. That's what the super sticker and everything to help sustain our works and our efforts and the BroDiallo show. And I'll see y'all next Monday night. Enjoy your Halloween. Also, if you don't follow me across the socials, every year my family does a costume contest, and you can vote on who wins. And it's a vegan. Speaker ain't working again. Lord have His mercy. Wow, it's wild. My sound is off again. I can't hear the other stuff. Anyway, we do a costume contest. So go on there and vote for me. Because my wife, she don't come on here. She has all this scholarship and stuff, and she don't come on here and share it. And so vote for me to win the costume contest. I've only won it once. My son wins most of the time. Wow, this thing is really chapped up. I don't know if y'all can hear the music. Anyway, that's it. On Rational Radicals, every alternate Wednesday, we're going to talk more about the election, who to vote for and why, and who not to vote for and why. And we talked about the third-party political platforms. We talked about the Republican political platform. I got to holler at Skip so we can go over the neoliberal. We talked about the neo-fascist platform of the Republican. Now we're going to deal with the neoliberal platform of the Democrats, and we're going to talk about countermeasures to either both or the other one. But anyway, that's that. I don't know why I can't hear the music. My intro music isn't playing. I don't know what I did for all the... What's happening? This is wild. Anyway, I guess I'll be troubleshooting this shit because I don't mean to hold y'all up. Wow. I don't know what's happening. Anyway, I'll see y'all next week. Peace.